Yeah, we don't hear the sound. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll just be waiting here for a bit, and then we'll have the sound back. Okay. Sound is back. Yeah, I'll redo the introduction for a bit shortly because we lost the sound at the intro. Welcome all to our second talk of the Dutch birding Vogelmaand. This talk will be given in English by Arthur Geilvoet and Pierre-André Crochet, and we'll be talking about WP birding and Corvo in particular. So I'll give the word to Pierre now.
Ridge here in the middle, and most of the Azores are in Europe, but Corvo and Flores are on the American plate. The main, obviously, argument is biogeography, because these are all the birds you will see on Corvo on most of your days. And as you can see, these are all European species. So all the birds which are breeding on the Azores and on Corvo are European birds. So this is everything. Most of your days on Corvo. Should I continue?
Oh, Chitoy, I think someone muted you again. We have some issues with the sound, it seems, at the moment.
Just give me a signal when I need to start again.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a bit difficult with the delay, so we. I think we should start over again, Pierre.
From the beginning, or?
Yep, from the beginning. Take it all the way from the top. Well, you're muted. We cannot hear you, but.
I didn't get that.
I see Pierre's presentation. Yeah. Yes. Pierre, if you could restart the first slide, just the entire presentation.
Can you see the first slide?
Yes, I can. The toy is still.
Okay, give me the green light. Okay, so I don't know what you've heard or not, but thanks for inviting me, and I will try to convince you or to explain to you tonight why you should go birding on Corvo, even if the trip list you will end up with will be very, very small. So where is Corvo? Corvo is in the middle of the Atlantic, approximately as close or as far from Europe and from North America. One of the questions we hear a lot when we bird on Corvo is Corvo in the Western Palearctic? Of course, yes. First, yes, because the Western Palearctic limit defined by Crump and Simon for the birds of the Western Palearctic, which I showed here in white, includes Corvo and Flores, even though they had to make a special case for Corvo and Flores, as you can see. And even if Corvo and Flores are on the American plate and not on the European plate, this is a mid-Atlantic ridge here. But the main argument is biogeography, because all the species you will see on Corvo on a normal day birding are European species. All these species are breeding on Corvo. This is a cheek of a common snipe, and you will recognize the rest of the species. And most of your days on Corvo, this is all you will see, plus collared dove, which colonized the island in 2014. So this is all European. So then, of course, Corvo is Western Palearctic. Corvo is quite a small island. It's about 6 times 4 kilometers, but it's quite high, and the slopes are usually very, very strong. It goes from sea level to 700 meters approximately. It's only 17 kilometers from Flores, which is much larger, and about 200 kilometers west of the central group of the Azores. So there are places in Corvo where we basically never go. The western cliffs and the top of the Caldera ridge, because it's either inaccessible or very difficult to walk to. So here the top of the photos are the upper slopes of the Caldera, and we hardly ever go there. And if you go, it's very difficult to walk, and there's hardly any birds there. Obviously, we don't bird the cliffs, even though there are woods on the cliff, as you can see. These are the western cliffs. Some are have quite a lot of vegetation, but we just cannot go. I'm going to skip this video because apparently it doesn't show very well, but it was to show you the forest on the cliffs. I'm going to present quickly the main birding areas on Corvo before going to the birds and the birding. So the first area where we usually start when we arrive for the afternoon is the village and the fields. So the village is the only village on the island. It's about 300 people, 350 now. It's called Villanova de Corvo. You can see the airstrip on the bottom, and all the rest are cultivated fields. So this is the old part of the village. Not many birds, even though we had the Cape May warblers in these canes here for last year. But so the main birding place around the village will be these fields, cultivated fields with stone walls all around. You can see here better the fields. So that's one of the main area on Corvo. And what's very good with Corvo is we can go absolutely everywhere, except in the gardens, obviously next to the houses, but everywhere else we're welcome, as long as we respect the stone walls. They are sometimes not very sturdy. They fall easily, so you have to be very careful. But as long as we don't kick the stone walls down, we can go absolutely everywhere, which is very, very nice. Another famous area is the Tennessee Valley. It's a small patch of, small. It looks small from here, but it's quite large actually. A patch of juniperus on the slopes above the village. So it doesn't seem very big from here, but it's actually when you're inside and when you're trying to find a bird, you realize it's quite large. It's the main patch of juniperus on the island, so it attracts some nice species. It's one of the most exciting area on Corvo, only discovered quite recently. Probably the most underbirded, underwalked place on Corvo are the high fields. And you can see why. It's because it's a very dense network of very high stone walls, which are very difficult to go through. So all the path goes from the road upward, and you cannot really cross all these fields. So we don't go there very, very often, which is probably a pity. The reservoir slopes. So the reservoir are just the small, very small reservoir. We never have any birds on the reservoir actually, but the slopes of the reservoir are very good for some open habitat species, pipits, snow bunting, Lapland bunting, and waders. We have a lot of waders on the wet meadows here. The caldera is what you can see. The lakes on the caldera is in the middle here. So it's the dead volcano, basically. Corvo was just a big volcano, and inside the caldera, inside the crater, you've got these lakes, which are the only place on Corvo where we regularly have ducks, and it's also another nice place for waders. So it's always nice, and the scenery is fantastic. It's always nice to go there for at least once every year, if the weather allows. And then the west side, so everything on the right hand of the picture here are the main woods. What we call the ribeiras is actually the word for streams in Portuguese. It's because these valleys have small streams in the middle, and these are the only valleys with woods on the island. So they are from north to south. The main ribeiras are the Lighthouse Valley, Cantinho and Cancelas, Fojo, Postagua, Dovint, Dapont, and Pico and Lapa. These are probably names you've heard before if you've followed Corvo a little bit. And some are quite large. Fojo, for example, is more than 300 meters per 300 meters. It doesn't sound too big, but it's actually made of very tall trees on quite a steep slope. So the area to bird, when you're trying to bird this, it's actually daunting. It's very, very large, and you lose birds there very, very easily. A lot of these valleys have quite steep slopes with cliffs and stones. So we've already have accidents on Corvo, people falling. It's very, very slippery after the rain, or stones falling over other people. So that can be tricky, and you need to be really careful. Just one word, these woods are all made of an invasive Australian tree, which is called, forgotten, Pittosporum. It's a Pittosporum. So even though it looks very wild, it's entirely made of an invasive Australian tree. The native vegetation is basically all gone, and just a few trees on the cliffs in some very small areas. This is another video that I'm not going to show, but basically you got the idea. It's dense, it's very tall, and it has as soon as it's open, the understory is very dense. This is a small garden on the edge of Fojo, I think. So the woods are obviously one of the main places to find the wood warblers, basically. And we've got other small areas of juniperus. For example, this is the Lighthouse Valley, another very, very famous area, which is on the north of the island. And this small juniperus patch has had more exciting species and probably more first species for the Western Palatic than anywhere else on the island. We don't know why it's so attractive, but it's one of the places that you need to check every day, basically. Even some of the minor valleys, this is Poço d'Água, it's very narrow. It may be 30, 40 meters wide, but because of the slopes and because of the dense vegetation, it can be extremely tricky to work. And we usually only bird on the edges this Paul who was with me last year, and he tried to cross once, but he never tried again. And it's actually very difficult to walk through these valleys, even if they are quite small. So when you have a bird in these woods, it can be tricky to locate them. So a lot of people usually we manage to follow the warblers, but if it's just a couple of you in the woods, you usually lose them very, very quickly. So why do we go there? What do we see? Obviously, the main species of interest are the American land birds. Corvo is, no question, the best place in the Western Palearctic to see American land birds. This is modified from a paper by Pierre-André and the Corvo birders in Dutch birding, and it shows you which species have been seen, and in which numbers. And as you can see, it's an impressive list of species. And if you look at the bottom, you'll have the species that you kind of expect to see if you spend a few years on Corvo. Red-eyed vireo is seen every year. Common yellow throat is the commonest warbler. Indigo bunting is a Corvo specialty, which is seen most of the years as well. Rose-breasted grosbeak, puff-bellied pipit, scarlet tanager, bobolink, grey-cheeked thrush. These are species that if you go for 2 or 3 years on Corvo, you'll see most of this. Then we have a small group of species which are seen regularly, but that cannot be guaranteed. For example, the black and white warbler, black-throated blue warbler, black-throated green, meter warbler, ovenbird, northern water thrush, American redstart, Tennessee warblers. They're seen regularly, but maybe every 2, 3, 4 years. And then you've got these very rare species, which are seen only very occasionally. I'm going to present some. And the thing is with Corvo, the species keep coming. So this list was made in 2018, and since then, we've already added Wilson's warbler, blue grosbeak, both in 2018, prosonotary warbler, Cape May warbler, chestnut-sided in 2019. Actually, chestnut-sided was seen before, but without photos, and warbling vireo was added last year. So they keep coming. Corvo is especially good for American wood warblers. We've seen all the Western Palearctic species except Therolian warbler and palm warbler, which have both been seen in Iceland only. We're not very good with buntings. We've had, I think, just a couple of white-throated buntings, a couple of white-crowned buntings, 2 or 3 of each. Except for a few specialties, as I said, rose-breasted grosbeak and indigo bunting are nearly common on Corvo. I mean, common most of the years, even though indigo is extremely rare anywhere else in the Western Palearctic. And we've got Lincoln sparrow, which has mainly been seen in the Western Palearctic. Dixie cell, the same. Nearly all Western Palearctic records are on Corvo. And blue grosbeak, the only category A record is on Corvo. For some reasons, we don't get Ampidonax yet, maybe, but for the moment, we've never had any Ampidonax, even though we've had all the 4 easternwood pewees for the Western Palearctic. So why no Ampidonax? We keep talking about this every year. We have no idea. Thrushes, that's not the best place, I would say, even though we have grey-cheeked and Swenson quite regularly, but hermit has only been seen 3 times, and Veery just once. Wood thrush is extremely rare. We've had only 2 records, but still, most of the Western Palearctic birders who have seen the species will have connected with it on Corvo, because hardly anyone has seen the silly ones, of course, and it was a long time ago. So what else can you do on Corvo? You can sea watching, and we do it quite a lot, especially when the winds are not right, with easterlies or end of the days. A lot of people end up sea watching. to be honest, it's extremely boring. Usually you spend hours and you will see only coral seawater. But with persistence, it can pay off. We've had one red-footed booby last year, which I missed because I was still at breakfast when it moved. And actually, most of the people on the island missed it because it was very early in the morning. We've had brown booby 2 years ago. We have quite a few fish-type petrels. They are nearly annual. There's been at least 2 Trinidad petrels from sea watching and once more from the boats between Corvo and Flores, so they are in the area from time to time. Waders, you don't usually go to Corvo for the waders, but except maybe for the Wilson snipe, which is pretty difficult to get because of the many common snipes breeding on Corvo, and also because the identification is very difficult. But with persistence, on some of the years, you can manage to find Wilson snipes and photograph it well enough to confirm the identification. We have quite a lot of white rum, sandpiper. Dorichus and yellowlegs are not very common. A lot of semi-pea plovers, semi-pea sandpipers, but obviously people don't go to Corvo to see these species usually, but we have a few of these on the coast or on the slopes of the Caldera. We've had the old Herons. I think there's been 2 records of American bittern now on Corvo and 1 record of yellow-crowned night heron, which ironically turned up the same year as the first one for the Western Palearctic on the Azores. So everyone went to take it on the Azores and everyone saw it again on Corvo the same year. That's life. And as I say, they keep coming. So every year we add new species to the list of Nearctic vagrants on Corvo. The only blank year was 2020, probably the main reason being the low coverage due to COVID and not many people being able to go to Corvo. So that's what keeps us coming. Is I've been on Corvo every year since 2006 and I've had new species for my WIPI list every year except 2020. This is a very poor picture, I'm sorry, but I just not scanned it, took a photo today of. It's from a recent paper by David Monticelli and others in British Birds, and it just shows how the number of American land birds has increased over the years, and obviously it's mostly due to the increase in coverage. There are more and more people going to Corvo, and that means more individuals and more species. And you can see 2020, which is below the trend. Again, it's low coverage due to COVID. One of the why we see more is that we've increased our skills. So I'm not going to play the sound. It doesn't work very well, apparently. Yeah, a little bit. Basically, we fish a lot more than before, and we use fishing tapes and mobbing tapes, and it works very well. That has been a major increase in efficiency on Corvo over the years. So before we used to walk and wait for the birds to call or show up, and it doesn't work. I mean, it does work, but since we've started being more active and fishing and using tapes, we've found maybe twice or maybe even more as many birds as before. The pace of finding birds is much better. So obviously one of the reasons why we keep going to Corvo is because there are new species for the Western Palearctic being added to the list on Corvo. The first one was white-eyed vireo by Peter Alfrey in 2005. And then we've had Lincoln Sparrow in 2010, Prairie Warbler in 2012, Yellow-throated Warbler 2013, Easternwood Peewee in 15, Blue Grosbeak 18, Prothonotary Warbler, the first one on the left, a young female in 2019 that just a handful of people saw because it was very early during the season, and unfortunately it probably died before everyone arrived. I say died because when I saw it, it was so weak that we were sure it wouldn't last, and it wasn't seen the next day. So I was extremely happy to see another one last year, 2021, on Corvo, a beautiful young male that everyone saw. So that was a very, very big joy to see it again. And the last new species for the Western Palearctic, warbling vireo, that Paul and I found in September last year. So unfortunately seen only by the two of us. But yeah, the newest addition to the Western Palearctic on Corvo. It's not only about Nearctic vagrants on Corvo. So bizarrely, we have quite a lot of corncrakes. So this species is, the picture is awful, but it's from Corvo actually. Yeah, it's one of the only picture of the species on Corvo, at least at the time, because it's very hard to photograph. But we have corncrakes most of the years, incredibly, most of the years, and sometimes as many as 3 or 4 different individuals during the season. So why and how they end up on Corvo is a complete mystery. But we have corncrakes, and we've had a few yellow-browed warblers. And I think we had as many as 3 individuals in the same autumn. Again, completely mind-blowing to imagine these small warblers also going all the way from Siberia to Corvo. And I remember once seeing chimney swift and yellow-browed warbler at the same time. We were watching a yellow-browed warbler with a chimney swift circling above. And of course, one of the most incredible records on Corvo has been Caspian Plover. And it ended up in a bizarre situation where the news broke out of an unidentified plover on the Reservoir Slopes, and everyone rushed there. And for 10 or 15 minutes, we were all trying to wonder how to separate a mountain plover from a Caspian plover, because you don't see that in any of the books. Well, when you see the photos, I mean, okay, it's quite obvious, but we didn't have any photos. All we had was the books, and for 10 to 15 minutes, everyone was lost, because that's not a situation you prepared in the Western Palearctic. So why to go to Corvo? I think 2 types of birders go to Corvo. The most obvious ones, obviously, are the weepy listers. This is a print screen from the Netfugl website that lists all the Western Palearctic birders with their Western Palearctic list, and all the names are Corvo regulars, except Chris Batty and Dan Poynton, who have never been to Corvo, and Richard Bonser, who has been with Arthur a few times, but who hasn't been very regularly. But all the big names in Western Palearctic listing are Corvo regulars for obvious reasons. But you also have another category of birders who go to Corvo, the rarity hunters. And if you are both a rarity hunter and a wispy lister, then Corvo is the place to go. And so some people go on Corvo absolutely not for twitching, but just for the pleasure of finding rare birds. So as I said, the number of people going to Corvo has increased from 2006, where we were, I think, 8 people on the season. This is the whole team minus myself. I was taking the photos. In 2013, you can see more people already. And for the blue grosbeak twitch in 2018, it's crowded. So we went from 9 people in 2006 to more than 100 in the last years before COVID, with up to 55 or 60 people at the same time on the island. Well, these people come from all over Europe. Most of the countries with active birders in Europe go to Corvo, and even Israel, that you can see very well on this map. We've got Israelis who are regulars on Corvo. So most of the people obviously go at the same time. First, we need westerlies. The occurrence of these near-Arctic vagrants is very highly dependent on the right weather. And if you have easterlies or no wind, basically nothing is going to happen. So we spend a lot of time, obviously, in the autumn looking at windy or magic seaweed, trying to interpret the weather. We don't always get it right, but one thing is sure, when you have easterlies, nothing is going to happen. And most of the time, unfortunately, the Azore high pressure, the Azore high, is, as the name implies, on the Azores, and it is extremely effective at deflecting the low pressure, the westerlies, further north, and it can be very frustrating to see all the westerlies going across the Atlantic north of the Azores. But the good news for Corvo is you don't need a storm over the island. You just need some westerlies, and they will deliver. So obviously, most people go at the peak time. If you want to be sure to have birds, most people go, I would say, 10 to 20th of October. First reason is that the weather is usually more predictable in the sense that we have more westerlies. Earlier in the season, the Azore high pressure, the Azore high, is more often on the Azores. And also, if you go late, you have more chance to have had good weather before. And because the birds tend to stay, if you go mid 10 to 20th October, you good chances to have good weather and to have had good weather before. But you can also go on the weather, last minute trips. You check the maps, and as soon as it's good, you book a trip and you go. The logistic is a bit more complicated. In October, it's going to be very difficult because all the accommodations are booked. But if you want to try early in September, that's the thing to do. And a few people have done that, most prominently Peter Stronach and Bob Swan from Scotland, and they've had a very, very good success with Cape May Warbler, chestnut-sided warbler, stuff like that in September trips that they planned on the last minute. But if you do that, the other solution is you go anyway, you go early anyway, but then you need to be prepared to do a lot of different things. In 2020, I went there early, and from 18 to 30 of September, the only near-Arctic vagrant land bird that we saw, Paul French and myself, except a couple of red-eyed Vero, was this bay-breasted warbler. So fantastic, you first day, bay-breasted warbler, you're happy, but then from 19 to 30 of September, just nothing. So you go swimming, or you work. Usually when I spend a month or more on Corvo, quite a lot of days are spent at the guest house working, or you go on pelagics. When we get really, when it's October, westerlies, and we all get bored, we arrange boat trips. We go outside. So I wanted to show you a video of cetaceans. But it's a nice videos of false killer whales, Pseudorca crassidens, that we saw very well on one of these boat trips around Corvo. So yeah, before giving the presentation to Arthur to speak about a few days, typical days on Corvo, I just wanted to conclude this part on the Corvo spirit, because I think compared to a lot of other places where I've been birding, and especially other hunting rarity grounds like Shetland, for example, Corvo is set apart by the spirit, and it's still a very nearly family spirit where we make sure that communication is quick and efficient, where we make sure that the finder spread the news and wait on site until everybody arrives so we can explain where the bird is. We try to communicate as soon as possible. If you have something funny, if you hear an American warbler that you cannot see, if you've seen something that you don't exactly know what is, but you know it's good, you just spread the news. You don't wait until you have identified it, to be like the finder and identifier. No, you try to spread the news so everyone can come, everyone can help relocating, everyone can be on site if the bird is refound. And we try to make sure everyone sees the bird. Obviously, with newcomers and common species, it's more difficult. You cannot expect old Corvo regulars to wait on site for everybody to arrive when they found a black and white warbler, for example, because most people have seen it and most people will not come. So that can be a bit frustrating, visits on Corvo. But for something mega that everyone needs, then you can be sure that everyone will wait, everyone will make sure everyone sees the bird, and we leave when everyone has seen it usually. So, and this is something I'm really happy about Corvo, is that we've always managed to maintain this very friendly spirit, and that's something I'm very happy and proud about Corvo. Arthur, if you can take over from here, I will mute.
Thank you, Pierre-André. So then I'll take over. My name is Arthur. Well, in 2011 and 2012 were the two times that I went to Corvo. I went with Richard Bonser. Pierre already mentioned him. And Richard, well, he was a keen Western Palearctic birder, but he was a teacher. So for him, it was difficult to get there in the peak season, like mid-October. So we had to go there rather late, end of October, beginning of November in 2012. But yeah, as already explained, the advantage was you don't have that many twitches, because on both the years we were only with 4 people and we had to do all the work ourselves. So we had to find a bird, no twitches. And well, I'm going to give an example of a few days of birding, how that went. I'm going to tell a little bit about the expectations versus reality. Well, and as I said, I will give 4 examples of a day of birding on Corvo. So the birding itself, I will be quick here because Pierre already mentioned a lot about it. Well, it's by no means easy. It's not like you go to Texas, sit on a lookout in High Island, and the warblers are in front of you in the field. No, it's like working these forests, working the stone walls. It's very, very hard, and you really have to be physically fit to do some proper birding. If you're not physically fit, you can forget it. And then also the birds. Of course, I'm a little bit exaggerating here. It's not a field full of warblers or a lighthouse full of warblers, not at all. Well, as Pierre already mentioned, there are days you don't see anything at all. So yeah, so I went there with, I think, a little bit of a good reality sense to what I will see. But the strange thing is you don't have any target species, because there's not a single bird you're after. You're after an American warbler or a bunting, but you never know which one will turn up. So that's a little bit strange of birding on Corvo. And yeah, it's not this, it's like this. It's the blackcap sitting on the middle of the road, and you will see millions of them. And the house sparrows, the canaries, the chaffinches, they will drive you crazy. Well, I will skip this one because we had an introduction on all these places, but indeed the focus will be most in this part on the riberas, the wooded places where you can expect American wood warblers. So my first day, it was 24 October 2011. I arrived earlier and I arrived alone. I didn't arrive with Richard because Richard changed his plans last minute because there was a white-tailed tropic bird on the island of Flores, which is just south. So I had to go there alone. And I came in, I flew in from Terceira, and Richard arrived 1 hour after me. So this is the airfield, and you see Hotel Comodoro, which is the best place to stay. and that's where we stayed. So I had 1 hour before I quickly dropped off my luggage here at the Hotel Comodoro. But when I was at the terminal, Pierre-André was there and Vincent Legrand. And they told me that there was a yellow-billed cuckoo at the end, on the other side of the island. So it's a Cape Verdean farm, as they called it. So I had like 1 hour before Richard was there to search for it. And well, you can see that it doesn't look really big, the patch of forest, but yeah, when you're searching alone, it's impossible to find a bird. And the day before, David Monticelli had found a summer tanager in Fojo. So yeah, Richard was not keen at all to see the yellow-billed cuckoo. We were going to the summer tanager, and with us were 2 Norwegian birders. So we arranged someone to pick us up, and here we drive all the way up, drop off at Fojo to look for the summer tanager. And there you are reality, because this is how it looks like, and you're walking on the road with all the stone walls and all the hedges, and it's really, really difficult to, how do you get a summer tanager here? So it took us 3 hours, I guess, walking and checking the trees, just seeing all those same species you're really tired of after 1 hour, but there it was, the summer tanager. Yeah, it was a very good start, of course. It was only the 5th summer tanager of the Western Palearctic, and it was rather late. So, and I still think that this is my biggest blocker in the Western Palearctic. Not many people have seen this one in the Western Palearctic. So yeah, I can say this was a typical day, maybe. My first day was a typical day, seeing only one American land bird, and you spend the whole day to find it. So typical day number 1. Then we go on typical day number 2. So it was day 2 of our stay in Corvo, and the weather had changed significantly. It was raining, it was a storm, it was totally unpleasant to be outside. Richard is really fanatic. He went out in his raincoat, birding all the morning, but I was soaked after 1 hour, and I was done with it. So the only thing you do is checking some sheltered places, and well, there I saw this plover. It was in the harbor, it's like a sheltered place on the island, and well, I saw these palmations and well, a little bit of a yellow eye-ring. So I was like, okay, I'm on Corvo. That must be an American bird. Warned the other peoples. And said, I have a semi-palmated plover, but of course it was not. We were a little bit confused because this is just a common ringed plover. And well, seeing this bird, now I know where to look for, and always check all the birds here at the Brouwersdam in the Netherlands. Never found one. I hope I will one day, but because next year, 2012, there was a very good year for white-rump sandpipers and semi-palmated plovers, and I think we saw about 25 semi-palmated plovers on the various islands. Yeah, you can already see the difference. I will not go into too much detail, but the bill is much smaller. The breastband is more solid, and yeah, you can see it a little bit. The palmations are in between all the toes. So, well, I learned a lot from this bird, and not every bird is an American bird on Corvo. Well, in the afternoon, it cleared a bit. The rain stopped at least. It was still very windy, and we went up to Ribeira da Ponte, which is a big patch of wood quite close to the village. And I was a little bit slow. I was behind Richard and the Norwegian guys, and yeah, Richard found, like within 5 minutes, he found an Indigo Bunting. The Norwegian guy saw it, and I missed it. And I didn't see it all afternoon. I was searching, and I didn't see it. So it really didn't make me happy. Well, but when I was walking alone there, checking those edges and the small patches, then suddenly a yellow-billed cuckoo came out. It flew over this field, actually, and disappeared here in the pond, and we never saw it back again. So yeah, you can imagine that I was not feeling very good because I missed the Indigo Bunting, which everybody saw, and I was the only one seeing the yellow-billed cuckoo, but I didn't have a photo. So no photo, no bird, right? So I was a little bit disappointed in day 2. Well, it started to get the end of the day, and we walked back to the village. It's always nice to walk back because then you go down and not upwards. So here you have a very nice view of the village. Like Pierre already said, only 300 people live here. So can you imagine when 50 birders are there. It's really crazy. So we had a nice stop here, overviewed the village, and then suddenly Richard got totally nuts. He started screaming, and cursing, and I have no idea what was happening. And he was pointing over the village, and then this one was flying there. Yeah, it was day 2 on Corvo, and it was unforgettable. This one, was circling the village for like, I think 15 minutes. It tried to land on the buildings. It's really strange. And of course, for Richard, it was very sweet because he wanted to see that on Flores. He missed it over there, and then he comes back and he sees it on Corvo. By the time it was only the 3rd record for the Western Palearctic, so a real mega, and I think so far it's still the only one which has been seen on the Azores. So crazy day. Then day 3, a very typical day, and in the beginning, like I said, I wasn't expecting to do twitching because there was only 4 of us, no twitching, finding ourselves. But here, I made a mistake to go a little bit alone, so it ended up different than I thought it would be. It was a beautiful day. Sun was shining today, so I did my drop off at the crater ridge, and all the others, they were not very keen on going down into the crater. Because in the crater, the days before, a great blue heron has been seen, and that one would have been new for my Western Palearctic list, and I really wanted to see it. I couldn't see it here from the top, so I decided I will go down, I will circle the lake, and suddenly, hopefully, the heron will appear. But the others, they didn't want to. So the others went down, and I alone went into the crater. Well, obviously, you will not find here. There's almost no vegetation. Maybe this little patch of wood will, but no. I did see an American white egret, and I did see an American black duck, but that's it. Only some European birds, actually, some ducks. So it was good for the scenery, not good for the birds. And you can imagine climbing in the crater. It's pretty tough walk. It's very wet in the crater, so I was already a bit exhausted when I was on top of the ridge again. And we had a meeting point here at Da Ponte again. That's the place where we went yesterday and where the Indigo Bunting was. So I walked all the way down. I was relaxed, no text messages, nothing happening. So I was like, okay, I made a good choice. I did see the American great egret. And then I got all the way down and I didn't see Richard and nobody there. And then I got a text message that they found a buff-bellied pipit all the way up at the reservoir. So I was all the way down. Then I got a delayed text message that the buff-bellied pipit was there. And I was super frustrated because it's a tough walk up there again. But of course, I had to, and I did all the way up there again. I think it will take you 30 minutes, maybe 45. Again, you're very, very tired. And no buff-bellied pipit over there. I was searching, nothing. When you're searching alone, it's even more difficult. So some snow buntings were around and northern wheat ear, which is crazy that they are there, of course, but it didn't make me happy. And then when I was up there, I got another text message. They refound the Indigo Bunting again at the Ponte. And a few minutes later, they got the chimney swift over there. So now I was like rock bottom because I didn't see anything and they had it all. And I was totally at the wrong place. So there's only one little building at the reservoir, and I circled it one more time, and then suddenly, it was there. The buff-bellied pipit was on top of the building. So my mood got a little bit better. I really rushed down to the Ponte again, and a Norwegian guy finally was there. I didn't see him the first time, but now he was there, pointing upward, and there you go. The chimney swift was circling above my head, so that was good. And they told me that the Indigo Bunting was again seen in the same tree as it was yesterday. So I decided to wait in the tree and just see what happens. And after like 1 or 1.5 hours, there it was, the Indigo Bunting. So yeah, maybe this was a typical day because you do the twitching and although you don't want to, but it takes you so much time and it gets you so frustrated sometimes. But here I was really lucky that I did see the 3 birds. And of course, they were all 3 new for my Western Palearctic list. Yeah, and then here we also had two interesting herring girls, which we asked them Peter Adriaans, which were likely American herring girls, but we cannot be sure. Well, difficult stuff, especially when they're in adult plumage. And here in the top corner, you see we were at the Cantinho, if I'm correct. Here we saw a common yellow throat. Well, and you can imagine if a common yellow throat is in these vegetation, in Dutch it's called hortensia. It's super dense with the stone walls. Well, when you lose a bird, you lose it forever. You will not refine it, and we did not. We did see it all four, but it was only a few seconds, maybe half a minute, and it disappeared, never to be seen again. So yeah, that was my 2011, and then we went to 2012. And I think also that's maybe a little bit of a typical thing what happened to us. Because again, we had planned 5 days to be on Corvo, but the weather was terrible. We flew to Flores first because we had a little landing there, and then we would continue to Corvo, but the wind got so strong, and well, we couldn't continue. So we had to stay on Flores for 2 more nights, which is not ideal. We did see some nice birds though, like many white-rumped sandpipers and a ring-billed gull and a wood duck, which is a good bird, of course, if you don't count the category C stuff. And also an American black duck, and again, many semi-palmated plovers. So, but yeah, we want to be on Corvo. We don't want to be on Flores. Well, 2 days later, finally it cleared. On the 31st of October, we arrived. So again, here at the terminal, dropping off our stuff at the Hotel Comodoro. And this was not a typical day on Corvo, because what happened here was totally crazy. We knew that the mourning dove was present in the village. It was there already for, I think, 2 weeks. So yeah, we were after that one. And I think it was only 5 minutes and the mourning dove was already there. First it flew by. The second day we had great looks, and this photo is from Richard. It didn't look really healthy here, and it was also regularly attacked by cats, we heard. So probably it will never survive. But anyway, again, nice tick. And then what happened then, it was literally 2 minutes after. We were still at the same spot, the left red circle, and I saw, oh, I'm sorry for this. This is the mourning dove. Here, this is what happened. I saw a sparrow in the middle field, and I couldn't really see which species it was. I'm not really familiar with all the American sparrows, but I knew it was right. So stress all over. Richard was close to me, and this was the first picture I took. And then we knew it was a Lincoln sparrow, and by that time we thought it was the 3rd record for Corvo. There was a bird in the same year, and which was like 3 weeks earlier. Well, they decided that it was the same bird, so then it's the second Western Palearctic tick. But well, yeah, we had crazy looks. We were like only 30 minutes on the island, and we were watching this one. So that was amazing start, and not a typical day. And we had only 3 days. It was a pity because we lost 2 days due to bad weather. But well, in those other 2 days, we had some nice things like the common crane, the wrong crane. Of course, I wanted to see sandhill crane, but well, this one is also nice. Yeah, they took a completely wrong turn and ended up in the middle of the crater. It was an adult with a youngster. We had an American robin on the high fields. Also, that time a new tick for me for the Western Palearctic list. And the black-crowned night heron was there. Of course, you want to see the yellow-crowned, but well, this one was also nice because apparently, and I'm not completely sure about it, it's from the American subspecies. And then also in the harbor, there was a semi-palmated sandpiper together with turnstones and 2 semi-palmated plovers, and a purple sandpiper, which is also a nice Corvo tick. Okay, then I'm going to hand it over back to Pierre.
Someone tell me if you can see my screen. Not yet. Do I need to share again, maybe? No? Good. Well, thank you. I think it was very nice, and I think it will echo a lot of the feelings from a lot of people who have been to Corvo over the years, is that it can be very frustrating. It can be very frustrating because you kind of expect or hope, at least, but sometimes expect to find or to see a lot of American birds, and it's usually not the case. On a typical day, I mean, on a typical trip, you will only find 2 or 3 if it's an average year, or 4 or 5 or 6 if it's a good year, American birds yourself. And on most days, if you don't twitch, you will see 0 or 1 or 2 American birds, but on many days you will see 0. And if you go and need a lot of species, then it can get very frustrating, because the more birds are on the island, the more time you spend trying to see them. And as Arthur said, if everyone is looking for the same bird, then usually it's not too complicated, even though sometimes we all spend a day to relocate a bird. But if you're on your own and people keep finding birds everywhere, then you can get mad. And I know some people have had a few frustrating first days on Corvo. And yeah, I think you will all remember the Western Palatic big year. They didn't like Corvo. They didn't like it at all. They ended up missing so many birds and being so frustrated, because you just can't expect that it's going to be easy to see everything. So the rules of spirits. So that if a few tips if you don't want to be too frustrated. First, do not go late in the day, late in the afternoon, in places where you have no connection. Do not go into the Caldera, do not go into the Lighthouse Valley late in the day, because chances are when you come back to phone signal, you will have news of a bird you will have missed. Learn when to catch phone signal. In most of the island, around the village, we have the phone signal everywhere. As soon as we go on the west side, in the woods, most of the woods have no phone signal, except for a few specific places. So it's a good idea to learn them, and every hour, go and check. It's to the point that when I'm birding alone in some of the woods and I know no one is around on radio, every hour I would leave the woods, walk for 2 minutes until a high point where I can check the phone, the WhatsApp, and then go back into the woods. You don't want to spend 5 hours without news on Corvo. It's always a bad sign. Always try to have your radio on when you are in these no phone areas, because we have this communication system where if you pick up news on the phone, then you will repeat it on the radio. And if you hear something on radio and you have phone signals, then you will send it on the WhatsApp group. So we have this WhatsApp group for the island, and we try to combine radio and WhatsApp so that the news always travels through both channels, I would say. If you need something, go immediately and run. So in the beginning, we didn't have the taxi on Corvo. Manuel, the owner from the guest house, would bring us up in the morning with his car, and then we would walk the whole day. So when you needed something, you had to run to try to hitchhike. So the locals were very friendly, and we ended up sometimes a bit crowded in the cars and the trailers. I can't remember where we were going for when this photo was taken, but that was the good old days where we had no taxi and the locals were very helpful. No, it's a bit, it's less fun, I would say. There are several taxis companies on Corvo. We have their phone numbers, so we call the taxis when we need. To be fair, when it was just 15 or 20, it was easy to hitchhike. But now with 50 people on the island, you can't do that anymore. Plus, the police is now enforcing the same rules as everywhere in Europe, so you're not allowed to do that anymore. It's less fun, but you're not allowed to do it anymore. And then you need to run. So you run over the stone walls, you run in the fields. So that was a video that I'm not going to show, but basically it's a lot of people running. And then you wait, because usually when you arrive, the bird has left. So either you wait or you spread, and it can be a very nervous time. So sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 hours before the bird comes back. But so far, we haven't missed many birds. Most of the birds have been seen by everyone, the big birds at least, but sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes the biggest part of the day. Sometimes the bird is found in the morning and everyone sees it in the middle of the afternoon. But if it's a bird everyone needs there anyway. And then you relax. So that was a hooded warbler in Cancelas. As you can see, it's a pretty thick wood where it can be difficult to find a warbler. So this one got me nervous for a while, especially I was away, and when I came in the woods, most people had seen it already, which is never a good situation. And then everybody looks at his camera. Obviously, that's photographers are always prominent on Corvo, and then you rest a little bit because you had a long day running. So yes, this was, as I said, we used to go up by car with Manuel's car. No, it's not the case anymore. We have the taxis to go up. If you want to go to Corvo, you basically need to fly. So this was a video showing the plane landing, which is quite nice because the plane, the airstrip is very short, so the landing on Corvo is pretty spectacular. But I'm not going to show it. The videos don't work, obviously, apparently. There's only one company going to Corvo and Flores, is SATA, Azor Airlines. At the peak of the season, the planes can be quite full, so it can be a good idea to book a bit in advance. During the autumn season, there are usually 4 flights a week, 4 days a week. So there's no flight on Sunday, Saturday, and usually no flights on Tuesday either. You can fly to Flores every day and then take a boat, the ferry to Corvo, but this is it's weather dependent and it's not every day usually. So, but basically, except on Sunday, you can either fly to Corvo or fly to Flores and take the boat to Corvo. Try not to plan a tight schedule for your return because it's quite common to be stuck on Corvo for a few days. Basically, because of the slopes above the airstrip, with northern winds, northerlies, strong northerlies, the plane cannot come. So we can be stuck on Corvo for 1, 2, 3 days. It's quite. Most people will tend to stay at the guest house. The upper 2 photos are Arthur Fade, the guest house Comodoro, the main hotel, but it can only accommodate maybe maximum 20 birders. So a lot of other places have been opened now on Corvo. Vera and Joe's, this bottom left photo is one of them. And quite a few people camp on Corvo. The campsite has been renovated. It has showers, it has toilets, it has everything. And well, the weather on Corvo can be a bit demanding for camping, but surprisingly enough, the camping can be nearly full during some of the peak time during the autumn, especially the Poles. The guys from Poland camp very often, and we've got a couple of Danes from Denmark who like to camp as well. So that's always a possibility. The camping is free, and there's always space on the camping. We used to eat all at the same place in the restaurant, which was very nice because it was an opportunity to see everyone and meet everyone every day and do a log. We used to do a log at the restaurant. Unfortunately, it's not possible anymore because we are just too numerous and people tend to, we have to split for dinner between the different restaurants, and some people eat at the place where they stay. So it's a problem for the social life and sometimes for the communication of what has been seen every day. I think we all regret this change, but it's unavoidable. We are not too many people, too numerous to eat all at the same place. And if you want to go to Corvo and you cannot find an accommodation, then I would suggest you consider Flores. Flores, of course, is less easy. The twitching is more difficult because it's so big that the birds are very difficult to find. But Flores has had 2 new species for the Western Palearctic in the last years, Western Kingbird and Connecticut Warbler. During the years when people were split between Flores and Corvo, Stefan Rodebrandt, for example, had a habit to spend his time on Flores, and quite a few birders were birding Flores. And in many years, there was this kind of competition between Flores and Corvo, and actually Flores was doing quite well compared to Corvo. So Flores is less convenient a place to twitch, but it's probably as good a place to find. So you can always try Flores. You will have probably a very interesting stay. Before I conclude, I would like to insist on the help we have from everyone on Corvo. The man standing next to me is the current mayor of Corvo, Jose, and